They said he abandoned them. They repeated it for years. They said he locked the door, took the key, and walked away when things became hard. But the key was in his hand. He stood in the hallway and heard his children say it again. Not whispering, not arguing. Repeating it the way people repeat a story that is settled into truth. The door was locked, the oldest son said. He took the key. We had no choice but to move on. The words landed with the same calm certainty they always had. Not anger, not doubt. Certainty. He didn't step inside. He had learned what stepping inside did. It turned into noise, into denial, into the same story, told louder. The metal pressed into his palm. Cold. Real. Proof of something no one had ever checked. He walked back to the small room he used when he visited. It wasn't his house anymore. It hadn't been for years. Inside an old box he found the tag still tied to the key. A door number, from the old apartment building. The one with the storage room. The one they said he had locked and abandoned. The ink was faded. Older than the version of the story they carried. If the key had never been missing, then something else had been taken from him. And the building was only a few blocks away. The paint was peeling. The directory had names crossed out and written over. He went down to the basement corridor. The door with the number from the tag was still there. He slid the key into the lock. It didn't turn. He tried again. Halfway in, it stopped. The sound was wrong. The screws around the lock were new. The door had been changed. If the lock had been changed, someone had done it on purpose. At the porter's desk, he asked about the storage rooms. The porter checked an old maintenance folder. One page was creased from being handled too many times. The lock had been replaced. The date matched the month the accusation became permanent. The name on the request line was not his. It was the oldest son's. The paper felt heavier than it should have. The story had always been that he locked the door and disappeared. The record said the door had been taken from him after he was blamed. Someone had made sure the old key would never work again. Bagkiviu. Outside, an older man recognized him. The man who used to clean the stairwell years ago. He remembered the door. He remembered seeing the oldest son in the basement late at night, carrying boxes out, saying things were being reorganized. The memory wasn't perfect, but the shape of it was clear. While the family said the father had abandoned the space, someone else had quietly taken control of it. For the first time in years, the story he carried began to shift. The accusation hadn't just removed him. It had given someone else room to act. With permission from the current manager, he returned to the storage room later that week. Inside were boxes stacked neatly. The handwriting on the labels wasn't his. The dates were careful. He found documents the family said he had taken. They were still there. Some had been filed months after he was told not to come back. The space hadn't been abandoned. It had been used. He took photos. Only what he needed. The truth wasn't loud. It was organized. At home, he laid the copies on the table. Maintenance records, receipts, signatures he recognized, not his own. The dates didn't match the story his family had repeated for years. The key lay beside the papers. The metal reflected the light. The key had been present when the story said it was gone. The key hadn't failed. The story had. He met the oldest son at a cafe. The son arrived late, didn't apologize. The father placed the maintenance record between them. Then the photos of the labeled boxes. The son looked away. "I did what I thought had to be done," he said. The father pointed to the date, then to the name. The son's certainty faltered. He said he had believed the father caused the problem, that someone had to take control. The father didn't raise his voice. He asked why the lock had been changed in his son's name. He asked why the space had been used while the story of abandonment was being repeated. The son didn't answer. Not at first. The noise of the cafe filled the space where the truth should have been. Later, an older relative admitted she had doubted the story years ago. She had stayed silent. It was easier to let the version told with confidence become memory. In the storage room, behind folders no one had opened in years, he found an envelope with his son's handwriting. Inside were copies of notices, with notes in the margins, turning uncertainty into blame before the story was shared. A voicemail from the building's old administrator confirmed it. The access had been changed for temporary control. The father had asked to be notified. The message never reached him. Someone had stopped it. At a small family gathering, the dates were read aloud. The ledger was placed on the table. The items sold during the father's absence had quietly covered expenses the oldest son took responsibility for. The benefit wasn't dramatic. It was practical, and it explained why the story had been allowed to stand. The room went quiet. For the first time, the family understood that the story wasn't just wrong, it had been useful. The son said he was sorry. Not that he planned it, that he had grown into it. The apology named harm but not the full shape of it. The father didn't accept it. He didn't reject it. He stood up. The building manager offered to return control of the storage room to him. He declined. He left the key with the manager. The door that had carried years of blame stayed closed behind him. Not as punishment, as refusal. In the weeks that followed, the family spoke less about the past. The old story no longer fit the proof. The silence returned. But it wasn't built on certainty anymore. It was built on discomfort. At home, he placed the old key in the back of a drawer. It no longer opened anything that mattered. They had blamed him for years. The key proved it was never his fault. The truth didn't fix everything. It just put the weight back where it belonged.